I call this meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. The meeting of the WSESU will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue this meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during the meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call in accordance with the law. Welcome, everybody. The first thing I would like is to amend the agenda. We have, I believe, retirement.
We have two retirements.
Yeah. So, should we put them in ahead of finance?
What's that?
Would we put them in ahead of finance?
Sure.
Okay. Does everybody approve of that?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So true. I would entertain a motion for the approval of minutes for November 8th, 2023.
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah. Any additions, deletions, corrections?
I apologize. What date? November 8th?
November 8th.
November, thank you.
No problem. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, the minutes are approved. And moving on to Mark.
Okay, so two retirements to present tonight. Sue Mitchell will be retiring at the end of the year. She's a special ed para at BAMS for many years. And then very sad news for central office and the school district. Our very own Paul Smith will be retiring at the end of the year after just amazing service to our schools, students, families, teachers. I've learned a ton from Paul over the years. I know Bryn has echoed those statements before as well. It's just been an honor and a pleasure to work with you.
As it has been an honor and a pleasure to be in here.
Can we vote now?
I would entertain a motion to approve these retirements with the deepest regret.
I'd like to make that motion with the very sincerest and heartfelt regret.
Thank you, Kelly. All those in favor? Any discussion? I mean, besides telling him how amazing he is, because I've also learned a lot from Paul, and he's had plenty of time to teach me.
So discussion.
Yeah. We're
going to debate this one.
So discussion. So Paul, this is a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be around to answer our many questions?
Absolutely. Nowadays, nobody ever actually really retires. You just sort of do different things.
I know that. Don't I know that? Yes, I do. And can we call upon you to continue to be with us on many occasions in policy, please?
Sure.
Thank
Sure.
you. That very grateful for that. Thank you very much. I've learned so much.
Does the end of the year mean the calendar year or the academic year?
No, academic year.
Okay.
June 3rd.
So should we amend this not to retirement, but semi-retirement?
Probably not if he wants his pension.
Okay, fine.
Just saying. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you so much for your service, Paul.
Oh, you are most welcome. You're not going to let me sort of go if I can't get this thing.
You're the one who taught me how to do it, so if you can't do it, I'm in trouble. Okay. Let me take the agenda back. Did you have something further for us, Mike?
Yeah, and I think with Paul's retirement, and I think it's very evident Paul has a very unique skill set. It's very evident Paul has a very unique skill set. It's very evident Paul has a very unique skill set. It's very evident Paul has a very unique skill set.
I can even make that be repeated over and over.
I'm
Well,
afraid
now
to
you know
tell.
what to do with the soundbite from the recording.
There we go, sorry.
So actually, the group of us here representing the administration have known for a while that Paul's been seriously considering retiring at the end of the school year. So that put us in a little bit of a tailspin this summer and thinking about, well, geez, how do we replace what Paul brings to the table? Because there's so many things that he does behind the scenes around grant management, budget development, mentoring, technology, curriculum coordination at schools, grade level meetings, Title I work, just really vast array of responsibilities that he has. So kind of felt like we're not really going to find somebody who can do all of that stuff in year one. So with every departure, there's also an opportunity to kind of look at how you're structured. So actually the four of us had spent quite a bit of time throughout the summer and this fall considering what that could look like for next year and beyond. So I do have a draft of an approach, and this relates to the budget, and we'll be talking about this in terms of the impact on the budget later in the meeting. I'm going to present to you kind of a vision for moving forward. And Kelly's online, but she has seen this. So what we're looking to do is kind of revamp a little bit and provide a little bit more clarity around the roles and responsibilities of central office administration. So this vision includes a new position, which is on the top of the page, a director of curriculum and assessment. Working underneath the director of curriculum and assessment will be 2 curriculum coordinators. One with a primary focus on pre-K through 6th grade curriculum coordination, and then the partner curriculum coordinator would be focused on 7 through 12 curriculum coordination. Along with this outlook, we would maintain 2 coaches, instructional coaches, as well. So this is a change. It provides more supervision and evaluation with the director position. Currently in this year's budget and in previous budgets, we've funded 3 coaches and 2 curriculum coordinators. So this is kind of a revamp with a director of curriculum, 2 curriculum coordinators with clarity around job description of pre-K through 7, pre-K through 6, 7 through 12, and then we'd be reducing to 2 coaches. So still be a 5-member curriculum team with a rearrangement in responsibilities and more oversight and supervision with the director position. As I shared with Deborah, Ann, and Kelly, over the years, in my experience as an administrator, our admin meetings have been really focused on developing a solid foundation at the elementary level, and not as much of a focus at the high school level. So it's been a little bit of a silo in terms of curriculum support. And by creating this clarity in this direction, it shows very clearly that there is going to be curriculum coordination at central office that works directly with the high school. And I think this approach, coming off of last night's presentation, will help us get to where we want to go moving forward around MLSS development, and really looking at a different way of doing things at the secondary level. So Paul was very much part of this creation, as well as Brian and Frank, and we feel like this is a very good approach and a good plan for moving forward with a new direction in supporting curriculum and supporting our teachers' professional development, and potentially providing more pre-K through 12 alignment.
So you know, I mean, you didn't have a chance to warn this, so this is strictly a discussion this evening.
Yeah.
Where is grant management?
Director. 3 from the bottom. I think.
Oh, got it.
That was the first thing I looked for too.
And we spelled out all the acronyms, unless I just want to hear.
Deeply appreciate that.
And I would see part of my work is also helping, you know, sort of supporting the grants management piece, sort of the transition.
And can this well-translated document be made available so we can attach it to the minutes?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Paul just does so many things so well that he's been like tasked with so many responsibilities that frankly are unrealistic to put on somebody else. So I think this provides some clarity around responsibilities moving forward in these new positions.
I feel like I literally watched that happen. You know, there were 2 curriculum coordinators, and one was you and one was Lyle, and yeah, I watched it happen. I watched your job change to something really large.
Yeah, I was thinking about that last night, listening to what we were doing. And when I started teaching in 1991, it was, here's a classroom, teach. Your kids, teach. And since that time, we have identified standards and said that all kids have to succeed. And we've found diagnostic instruments and interventions and just build up this structure to support kids in ways that we never did before. And I feel like the curriculum office kind of hasn't caught up yet. You know, has gone along with, we had 2 curriculum coordinators in 1999, 2000. And we have 2 curriculum coordinators in 2020.
I think this will support much of the presentation from last night in terms of not shifting focus, but supporting focus on this campus, on the high school campus. So for it to be divided between pre-K and 6 and 7 through 12.
I will share, I've seen a draft of the NEASC report that came out on Monday, and that's in a holding pattern for I think 30 days before it gets released. But I will say confidently, one of the recommendations or things that were noted in the report was a need and want for more direction from the curriculum office on this campus. So that was a major takeaway from the NEASC report, which, you know, we'd already created this vision. So when I read that, I was like, hey, we're on the right track. Makes sense.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments, or anybody on Zoom have questions, comments about this? I'll warn it for the next meeting.
Yeah, since that presentation yesterday, I've been thinking a lot about MLSS, particularly for the high school, the unique challenges that the high school has especially for professional development. So that's to focus somebody on the high school and the middle school makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I agree with that. Okay, Deborah, did you have something?
It was just a technicality, so in warning it for the next meeting, are you doing that so that there can be action taken
Yes,
on
yes.
this?
No position can exist except if it is created by the school board
Got it.
or
And,
eliminated.
right, so this represents job descriptions. in
Yeah, and
effect.
we already have 2 curriculum coordinators in our positions have been established.
Mhm.
It's this director of curriculum and assessment that didn't exist before, and we have to create it.
Yep.
By a vote.
And don't we have to approve the radical changes in job descriptions?
No, really, we can. I mean, the job descriptions, I believe, are at the discretion of the administration to change as necessary. So for example, I don't know, an administrator, an admin assistant could suddenly have to type a particular set of reports that she didn't have to before.
Yeah, as Paul's role has evolved over the years,
Yeah.
His job description in 2000 is much different than what he's doing right now in 2023.
Yeah, this is where we're a symbiotic relationship in that they make decisions like that and we say yes or no. And I'm inclined to say yes here, but obviously can't do that without warning. And if anybody thinks of any more questions in the ensuing week, then by gosh, let's have them ready and ask them, because
So the 2 current curriculum coordinators are divided in terms of this process, pre-K through 6 and?
Not
So-
currently.
Not currently, right.
This would be a completely new
yeah, they both
approach.
did both before.
I'm sorry.
They both did both before on an as-needed basis.
Okay, so then perhaps with that in mind, this is a motion for 3 new job descriptions. If you have curriculum coordinators who are doing both, now you're actually restructuring the whole department.
It's still a curriculum coordinator endorsement,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay,
So in the same way that a elementary teacher could be assigned at any grade level,
right, got it.
the level at which you ask folks to work, it's still the same work.
Okay, understood. So really, it's the director that is the addition.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Always. Okay, if there isn't anything further, Frank, you are on.
Okay, we do have our budget proposal had been emailed, and on the website I did bring a few hard copies if anyone would like one. There's 2 formats. One is the admin and instruction, supportive instruction, and then the other is the grants. So, anyone want a hard copy?
Yeah, I
I
do
do.
too. Thank you.
I've got
Yes.
much going on here.
Yes.
all at
Yeah,
once.
I'm gonna
Yes.
give up.
I don't know if I already
Right,
done that.
our computer screen.
Right.
Get the admin,
Thank you.
for sure.
Okay, there we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, is it just one
And
handout?
then comes the second one.
Uh-huh,
I do
thank you.
that.
All right.
You have the,
I know I don't.
okay, here's the second one, the admin
Mhm.
supportive instruction. And here it is.
Thank you.
Okay,
This is one.
here we go. And then you already have one, Mark.
Yep.
Would you like to cut that? You got it online too.
We'll do that after.
Yeah,
we're
I
done
dropped
with
it.
the stuff.
Okay. Okay, so because we have the true experts in this arena, I will give a brief fiscal overview, but I know that the administrators in the room here will elaborate much more on the functions of the departments and the rationale for changes that we have. So if we start with the administration and supportive instruction proposal. This is where you would see the changes that we just discussed in terms of curriculum. So the document I'm looking at, it's the thinner one of the two documents. It's the 8-page one. And what we're looking at is, on the first page, it's the revenue assumptions. They're the ones in the brackets.
I'm
And
sorry, could you hold on just a second? Jody, you had your hand up.
Yes, is this going to be thrown? I have an ice cube in my mouth. Is this going to be shown on the screen so that I can see it too?
Yeah, we
Frank going to walk up here and give it to me a hard copy.
glad to do that share screen. Here we go.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's take a moment.
And I'm going to take copies for Kelly.
Oh, yes. Let's see where. Just take a moment to just going to log into the website and pull up the document.
While you're talking.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Paul's going to log in and he'll pull up the document. Okay. So while Paul's working on that, we'll make sure we review and emphasize here some of the points of references that we're making. So on the first page, as I was saying, the numbers in the brackets, those are the revenue assumptions to the SU for this group of services. And we haven't made those assumptions yet, and we generally don't until we have finalized that student census data that we've been talking about. You recall our allocation methodology is a 2-year average of the student census by school, and in this case, school district. And generally on the next meeting, we do review that allocation methodology and either approve it or modify it, depending on what's relevant.
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Sure.
The 2-year average, is that on FTEs?
It's on
Or
what
student census?
the state calls it an average daily membership statistic.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. No.
Pretty much the equivalent. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so there again on the first page, bottom section there, you see a reference to the expenditures, and then in the current and prior years, no activity, but we are bringing in a pre-K coordinator this year. This is one of 3 positions that were formerly funded by the ESSER grant. Paul's got our document up. Thank you, Paul. You're on the same page. There's the pre-K coordinator.
Jody, can you see that okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. And then, let's see.
The pre-K coordinator is a really important position moving forward because it is our hope and goal to expand pre-K opportunities in the school district. So we're currently exploring ways to do that, which we can report out on future board meetings, but to have the infrastructure in place to actually move forward and expand pre-K, it's going to be very important.
It's definitely something that's happening at the state level, the push to get more public pre-K.
Right. So there's the proposal, and you know we've talked about the Canal Street School and growing programming there, and this position will be very much assisting with that work. So on top page 72, I'm sorry, page 2, you see the 72,000 is the total of that that group for the pre-K coordinator, basically the salary and benefits. And then our next service in this group here at the SU is the information technology or technology coordination.
Can I just ask a question
Sure.
as I'm looking at this? So the total benefit package is 72K.
No, that's the total of the department. So it's all salary and benefits. So it's the total of what starts on page 1 there at the top, 44,000 in salary, 16,000 health insurance, and so on, and the total of all of that is 72.
So that's salary and benefit
Yes.
for this one person.
That's right.
Okay.
Point 8 position.
I'm sorry?
Point 8 position.
Yeah.
Not a full-
80%.
not a 1 FTE.
Yeah, not full-time.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm looking at the salary line
Yeah.
at the first, and
Yeah.
I'm a little stunned by it.
It's 4 days a week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then on the next page, 2 at the top, here's the curriculum and assessment department that we were just discussing. And keep in mind, all of these programs that we're discussing now are what are locally funded or essentially assessed back to the districts. We're going to talk about the grant-funded programs shortly, but these are the programs that are part of that group that we turn into an assessment to the districts. So here you see that incremental position right off the bat in the top line there, yeah, Paul's right there as well. So where we go from the 99,000 to the 180, that is reflecting the additional curriculum coordinator for a secondary level. Now, aside from that, it's pretty much a level funded budget, knowing that some of the costs like software, which is a very important part, as you heard last night from Bryn and the team, much of that is either in the grant programs or they're in the schools, at the school site. But obviously with the addition of the new position there, that department you see at the bottom of page 2 reflects the increase, 219,000 current budget going to 347 for the projected budget. Moving right along, at the bottom of page 2, you see the very first line of our technology coordinator, technology director, really, and fortunately we have a very capable person in that position that's been here many years. This is a very challenging position also to staff and retain because of the amazingly fast-moving arena that we have to work within. You may recall we talked about our cyber insurance vendor saying they would drop us if we didn't adopt a number of strategies, which we have done, but that takes a lot of expertise and investment. So we've sustained that. Moving through that proposal there, page 3, toward the bottom of the technology department at the central office, you see a $60,000 number across the page. That's a reflection of that, one of those expensive but required sort of cyber fraud prevention investments that we have made. The primary utility in that investment is a constant monitoring of the email that comes through, because it's the most common attempt to get into our systems and create problems. Bottom of page 3, the next group of services, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator position. Here's another, the second position, I mentioned 3, second position that was formerly funded by ESSER. You see why we are increasing the salary line substantially. That reflects 2 people instead of 1, as we have budgeted. The person that is coming in is the inclusion coordinator, and as I say, that position was formerly or currently funded by ESSER. Obviously, we want to retain that, and that's where that cost is identified.
Full-time?
That is full-time, 2 full-time positions.
Yeah.
So one was already in place, the second was established by ESSER.
It still exists today,
I
but
realize.
it's funded by the grant that's going away. Yeah, so we need to bring it into the funding source that is sustained.
And what are diversity equity stipends?
Those are for teacher leader, DEI teacher leader stipends at each school. So each school has dedicated teacher leaders to work directly with the diversity office and obviously the administration at the school site. So kind of like we were talking about last night with the MLSS development of having a common meeting once a month where representatives from all schools have an opportunity to meet together and collaborate. Same type of concept through the diversity office and utilizing teacher leaders at each of our schools.
Do you know how many the high school and the middle school have?
Off the top of my head, I don't know how many. Do you?
How many diversity equity leaders at the high school?
Yeah, is it like a handful or 1 or 2 or?
Generally 1 or 2.
I think most schools have 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And
Check
then
them.
each of the schools has one, Putney, Guilford.
Well, they can have more than 1, like Putney has more than 1, or at least they did. It's a volunteer position, and they meet monthly, and more often than that, actually, a lot of times.
And we can see that on the website, can't we? We can see those
No.
designations.
I think you'll see Michaela in position and Shannon Kelly, who's our diversity coach, which is the new
The
position.
diversity equity website, I think, would have those folks identified.
I think they do,
Do they?
yeah. 'Cause-
That's going to be directing a different
Right,
question.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. And other investments in the diversity program, you'll see on the next page, significant increase in the professional services line. And that's a reflection of engaging in more workshops for our staff and students. Let's see, I met with Michaela along with some other folks here, and we discussed, some of the indicators that we're looking for when, as a result of these investments. And Kayla's presented very, very good rationale for increasing the investment. Just as an example, I'm looking at some of the notes. So professional services for the restorative practices, K through 12, engaging consulting services, and in addition to some workshops, also supporting the Spring Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion school-wide event. It's all part of working toward justice initiatives. So that's the diversity, equity, but again, curriculum assessment up substantially, and we see this is another substantial increase in investing in these services, along with, as we already mentioned, pre-K. So you can see this is going to be quite an unusual year in terms of a total spend increase. The superintendent's office Oh, I don't want to skip over the board. We have a general supplies for the board. Of course, the board stipends are paid at the district level, not at the supervisory union level. So this would be for this board going to a conference and or any communication type of supplies that might be needed. A little unusual in that the SD really funds most of the board activities, and then Vernon has that option as well. So this is generally not a very highly utilized budget line item.
We're talking about the $4,500.
Yep.
And that funds what? Can you tell me?
Well, generally it would be like if, for example, you went to the VSBA workshop on behalf of this board. It's kind of hard to distinguish which board you're doing it on behalf of, and that's why it's somewhat underutilized, But it also could be like when you did the booklets, and if you went out and bought. Now that was on behalf, as I recall, the SD, right? It's always.
You're talking about the orientation manual.
Yeah, it's all a little fuzzy, but it could be
food. Can it be?
Yeah, if you host a meeting and you want to have some
Dinner. Food.
Okay.
Yeah, but as you know, most of the expenses are occurring at the district level. So for the superintendent's office, we see that on page 4 in the middle there. As we kind of scan through the proposal, you can see a little more typical change. $31,000 increase, 3.96%. I'm just looking at the bottom of page 5. And when we look at the individual line items, maybe one that sort of stands out is the second line down, executive secretary, office assistant. It's actually lower, and of course we know why that is. We had our beloved Barb Milikowski retire, and our new person is doing a terrific job.
Absolutely.
But she does not have the 30+ years that her predecessor had.
Frank, a couple of years ago there was a superintendent, an assistant superintendent line. Was that taken out last year?
That was in a grant at one point, and that was never pursued in terms of hiring.
So so it was dropped.
It wasn't, and it wasn't in this proposal. Okay. It was in the ESSER proposal at one time. So as you see, this proposal is very much sustaining, current services for next year through the superintendent's office. The salary represents superintendent and the executive secretary and the receptionist, and then the rest of the budget is much of the technology in terms of the software contracts that we have. There's some, the copier lease, the rental for the building, and then all of the advertising, printing, fingerprinting, and general supplies. So that's.
Frank, do you guys have like a long-term lease on that? I'm surprised it didn't
Yes,
go
we
up.
do. Yeah.
I'll say that quietly.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah, we haven't we haven't negotiated the extension, but it probably will.
Okay.
We have been really pleased over the landlord's improvements. I don't know if I'm sure you've noticed the parking lot had all kinds of holes in it. Every time it rained, you'd have to step in a puddle to get out of your car. That's all been really nicely upgraded.
Nice.
Building's been painted, and they did quite a bit of work to shore up the old chimney that was actually on the verge of collapsing. It goes all floors. So they've done a lot of work, and we really appreciate it.
They also squeezed out at least 5 more parking spaces.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Well, if you have a compound
card.
Oh,
okay. Bottom of page 5 is the business office operations. Here we have the business administrator position, the HR director, and the benefits coordinator, along with the benefits specialist, and then the accounting, which would be a payroll, accounts payable, and all of the support it takes to report and address the IRS requirements, the fiscal audit requirements, and kind of the backbone of the business operations. As you know, we've got just a terrific team at the office, very dedicated. And
is the benefit coordinator new this year, or do we already have that?
we added it this fiscal year.
This fiscal year?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's sustaining it.
It's sustaining it, okay.
Yeah.
So when it's linked with the HR director, is that one person or 2 people? Or am I reading this incorrectly?
HR director is actually 3 people.
Got it.
That line is director and benefits coordinator, and where it cuts off is as many characters as the software will allow us.
Okay, so that's 3 individuals.
That's 3 people, and but the increase is not actually a new position. It's a reflection of turnover and retaining really good people. Moving along, the facility director on page 6, you may recall formally was funded through ESSER. That's why fiscal year 23 there's no cost for the position, and then added in the current year and sustained. And that's been an excellent investment. Capital plan reflects the expertise and insight, and then, as you know, there's a lot of programs, projects being developed. And Robert Clark is instrumental in helping guide the system. The page 7, contracted student support. We've got a sort of a placeholder number there. There's still a lot of influx for transportation. This is for the to and from school. As I mentioned, we're looking to access the EPA grant that would allow us to build out electric bus fleet and the infrastructure that goes with that. The current vendor has experience in Massachusetts, specifically with assisting school district in accessing the grant. I've been working with Green Mountain Power and the current vendor, Beacon Mobility, to try to identify sites and that are compatible with the utilities integration, so that if we do, if we're successful with it, that the transmission lines can be connected, because as you know, it's a very, very high power requirement to do the charging of a commercial fleet. So that's to be determined, but there's a rough estimate. And then the other area for a significant increase in the budget, English language learner budget, page 7. Paul's done a good deal of review with Jen Corse and our group of English language learner teachers, and based on a projection of student need, another position has been asked for, and certainly seems warranted, so it's in here. That's what explains the significant increase in that department. So when we roll to the last page, we see the impact of this budget going from 5 million to 5.8 million. You know, up significantly associated with those new positions. And at this point, you know, we don't know the extent to which the poverty and waiting is going to essentially support this investment without a substantial tax impact, but we're going to find that out fairly soon, and that, you know, will be part of our discussions the next couple of meetings. Questions?
Yes. Go ahead, Deb.
So if the legislature does not come through with a decent package, you then have to turn around and do, or you must be doing at this point, what if analysis to see what the cuts might be.
Yeah, Mark and I and this team has had that conversation with our principals that we're not looking for a plan B or an alternate budget, but we need to be thinking about a contingency because we have to be fiscally responsible. So yes, we've asked folks to have that contingency in mind.
And even though you say you're not looking at a plan B, but a contingency plan is in effect.
Well, some systems actually do have a separate budget. It's widely discouraged because it number one, it kind of creates a lot of uncertainty when it becomes a public plan to have an alternative where potentially a lot of folks might not have a job. It's not a very, not
a good morale booster.
Right.
Right, this time of year. Okay.
Yeah.
This might be an SD question, but I'll ask it anyway. I was looking at the open positions, and there's a lot of para-educator positions open. It's hard to find paras. In the Social Justice Committee meeting, we were talking about, somebody brought up the fact that paras are paid more, substantially more in New Hampshire than here. Have you spoken about perhaps increasing the salaries for our paras to be equitable with those across the river?
Well, it's a negotiated benefit, and the union was very pleased with the
Paras
package.
are covered by the union?
Yeah. So the union was very pleased with the 3-year contract that was awarded, and it goes through 2025. And we certainly haven't heard that we're not competitive. And it'd be hard to believe in that. A family plan is $29,000 for the employer, and our paras are eligible for that. So that, in addition to the wage scale that has been agreed to, it's very, very competitive.
That might be the problem. People looking just at the salary and not the benefits.
Yeah, that's it used to be maybe a quarter of compensation, but now it can be nearly 100% at the payroll level. Where benefits are as much as the salary.
Where are we with health insurance?
Well, the Health Commission, took that away from the school boards, and the Department of Federal Financial Regulation has not approved the request, but it's a 17% request for premium increases.
Did you put that in this?
Yes, we
Okay.
have. Yeah.
And when is it finalized? Is that one of those things that happens after we make our decisions?
Yes.
Okay.
It's always helpful.
But they're generally pretty consistent with the request. There might be some modification, but typically it's not very far from the actuarial estimates.
Okay, so you go with the high number and hope that maybe
Yeah, well, I usually actually go with a lower number because with the HRA, which is another benefit, it's unlike an HSA. HRA, the employer is obligated to pay whatever the Health Commission has indicated. So next year it's, I believe, $4,000 for a family plan. An employee is eligible for that payment, but the employer doesn't disperse that money.
Yeah.
That they retain whatever the employee does not claim, and that tends to be the buffer for if I estimate a 12% increase and it comes at 12.5, that buffer generally covers the variance. But in this case, I've just gone with their recommended rate. And it's based on listening to the VHI is the group, their rationale, and it's just like so many other things we hear about in the schools. The nature of the claims are way up, and that's driving healthcare costs, of course, with inflation. So any other questions on that before we move over to the grant proposal?
Can I just clarify? So we've got 3 new positions that were ESSER funded: pre-K coordinator, DEI, and facilities director. And then we have a new English language learner position. Those are the 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure I get them right in here.
Good.
We're projected to have up to 90 new students not new, but 90 students next year, multilingual learners.
Okay.
And we're seeing a greater percentage of those students as newcomers with very, very limited English proficiency. And so in talking with that department, given the caseload and the need of students there are currently 5.5 positions in the department. So upping that to 6.5 positions would really allow for the support needed for the students and teachers.
Okay, so if we turn to the larger handout, which is the grant proposal, I think I'll just flip to the last page and then maybe turn it over to Paul, if you don't mind, kind of giving a little bit of a overview of our various grants, the ones that you particularly administer. But if you just go to the back page, page 20, you get a sense of what we're dealing with in terms of trying to fund the vital services that we've been funding through the grants. So on the very end of page 20, you see we spent $8.8 million in fiscal year 23. That's the actual spending of all grants. And then in the current year, initially, if you look at the adopted budget, it was $6.1 million, but then many of us went out and were able to secure more funding after our meeting last December. And so we're operating on a $6.9 million budget this year. But you can see that was still, there was 3 rounds of ESSER, and ESSER 2 ended in fiscal year 23. So that's a significant drop there, going from fiscal year 23 to 24, the end of ESSER 2. And then going from this year, fiscal year 24, amended that $6.9 million. You see now we're down to where was more typical, $3 million. And there's the $3.8 million reduction that is the last of the ESSER 3. So no surprise to us, stuff we've been planning for, and what you just heard in terms of our proposal on the local funded, obviously we didn't bring $3.8 million into the into the locally funded proposal, but we did bring a fraction of that into the local proposal. Paul, do you want to just kind of highlight our largest investment in the out of the $3 million there is Title I, and I can just get us over to
That's on page
One.
Page 1.
And well, the very first part is our revenues, and we might want to skip down there because again, until we have a plan, we don't plug in our assumptions. I think it starts on page 4. The expenditures for Title I.
So just an overview, Consolidated Federal Program, CFP is often the term we use. It is constituted by Title I, Title IIA, and Title IV. Title I is compensatory education for students in poverty. Title IIA is professional development for educators. Title IV is a sort of a mixed bag, well-rounded education, technology, infrastructure, and integration, and safe and healthy schools. Title I is about 1.3 million. Title IIA is about 250,000. Title I is about 125. Or Title IV is about 125,000. Those we use. It's sort of, in some ways, some of those federal funds are really sort of lubrication for bringing in new programs, new professional development opportunities, to see how they work, and then they often get moved on to, if they are successful, into other grants, or sometimes we sort of incorporate them as part of the local budget. Title I funding is almost exclusively for, at least historically, has been almost exclusively for academic support teachers in schools. Of late, we have identified coaches. Some of the district level coaches funding comes from Title I, and some of Bryn's and my salary, Bryn's salary, we anticipate in the new configuration, some of that money will come from Title I. And a big change for us for the coming year has been the need to move to create a full-time, actually it's for this year, excuse me, homeless liaison position. Prior to this year, we were relying on the good graces of a former counselor in the district who bent over backwards, spent all sorts of her own personal time and money to provide those services, and she's really needing to move on and let it go. And in looking at what was happening, we essentially had a full-time position there. So we've pulled some of the Title I money. Title I is traditionally where support for homeless, the McKinney-Vento legislation really targeted Title I as the money source. So we're using Title I funds to fund that position at the SU level. And we do now have a full-time homeless coordinator, and our homeless numbers have gone up year over year considerably. As well as, interestingly, many more additional needs in terms of clothing, personal care products, all of those things after school, cleats for soccer, all of those things McKinney-Vento legislation says we have to provide in order to remove any barriers to those students who are experiencing temporary housing insecurity, to make sure that they are able to get to school. On top of that, we use local transportation funds to pay for mileage in some cases, to pay for, in some cases, private transportation to get students, because they are entitled, back to their school of origin, whether it's, and there are cost sharing agreements that we do with other districts, whether it's their school of origin was here and they become homeless in Bellas Falls or Greenfield or Hinsdale, or the reverse, where families become homeless in Brattleboro and the student was attending in a school in another district. So that has shifted the picture for Title I, and some of the pieces that you'll see, some of the changes that you'll see in those budget lines is really reflecting that. So if we go through, Title I, as Frank says, starts on top of page, or bottom of page 4. And the thing with Title I, oh, this is another piece that's really important to understand. Something of late has happened. We generally allocate we get a pot of money for Title I. We allocate that money to schools based on the poverty level of the school, and that historically has been based on free and reduced lunch applications. With the, a few years ago, change to community eligibility in Brattleboro, we can no longer ask for free and reduced lunch applications, but we can put out a survey, a family income survey. But the incentive to fill out that family income survey is not the same as the incentive to fill out the free and reduced lunch application, because you got free and reduced lunch. If you filled out the application, everybody gets free and reduced lunch if you're on community eligibility. So we actually saw our numbers in that regard go down, and in fact to the point where one of our schools that we've funded with Title I for some time, Guilford Central School, fell below the cutoff for Title I funding. And this year, Guilford does not receive Title I funds. However, the state has changed how they determine poverty and is now using Medicaid data to identify students in a category called direct certification. And suddenly, all of our poverty numbers have gone up, I think, to a much more sort of closer to reality. But our numbers have gone up. In fact, they've gone up so far as it looks to me, I'm predicting, and we had to build into the budget, it looks to me as if Vernon will now qualify for Title I services. That's, I mean, good news for Vernon.
Right.
Bad news in terms of we've got a lot more poverty than was indicated in those numbers.
Yeah.
And the pot of money does not change based on your poverty numbers, because the pot of money is determined by a different calculation, which is census data. So we've got the same amount of money, but we've got to spread it to more schools now. So anticipate in the SD budget, when you're talking about that, you'll see some reductions in revenue from Title I because we're spreading that money over a larger area.
Can I just repeat that back? So the
Sure.
money is based on census data.
Correct.
But the number of kids who need it is based on Medicaid data, which is way better than what they were doing. At some point, does it catch up and does it get better? No.
Not really. It's,
No.
It's two different things.
It's
It's
two
always
different things.
been, it's always been, you get the pot, the size of the pot that comes to the district
Yeah,
is based on census data.
okay,
And the distribution of that money out to the schools is based on poverty. And in some cases, we haven't funded, I mean, Dummerston is not a Title I school. We don't fund,
right,
even though there are low-income students in Dummerston,
yeah,
presumably generating census data that adds to our low-income
Mhm.
count, as it were, right?
okay,
But we're not allocating money to Dummerston, right?
okay. So it doesn't make sense, but,
Right,
Okay,
right. It's
so
not.
I just wanna make sure
there's-
it's not
there's a
supposed
bit
to
of a
make sense,
mismatch
right.
that sometimes catches us out. And
okay,
this coming year is going to be one of those years where it catches us out.
okay.
This may be a really obvious question, but for example, Dummerston is not Title I because it doesn't have a large enough number,
Correct.
Less than 35%. Right.
less than 35% of the total student population?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, correct. But that number has been, across the SU, the numbers have been climbing.
So it's good that we've moved to Medicaid, because that will show more, but the pot of money isn't going to.
And a bit of a clarification,
That's
the direct certification is a number of things. SNAP, food stamps, neglected students, there's a whole set of indicators, including, now including Medicaid data.
And it's probably more accurate.
It's far as I'm concerned, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's
I
a
think
good,
it's
the
better.
silver lining there. The
And
bad thing is the money doesn't get bigger.
Part of that is I sort of feel confident about that because my sense is that the demographics in Vernon are changing.
Yeah.
And everybody's aware of that.
Yeah.
And that's showing up in the numbers.
Okay.
So if the pot of money is not growing, commensurate with the numbers of people that are growing who have the need.
Well, first of all, the census is a 10-year thing. So, and they do update it. And so there is some, if
And the
as a
pot of money
result-
is based on the census.
as a result of the overall increase, I do expect at some point to see some additional funds. But it's never clear to me that it's actually gonna show up on our doorstep for July 1, 2024. So in our planning, we've always got to sort of assume level funding. That is to say, assume we'll get in Title I what we got last year, and assume we'll get in Title IIA what we got in last year. So, oh, go ahead. Keep going.
So that means if the numbers, in terms of population, that number is growing, there's less money to spread around that group. Let's say compared with 5 years ago or 4.
Sure. There's,
But it's
it's more about how, whatever that pot is, how do we disperse it out to the schools? And at this point, we are, particularly since we didn't fund Guilford this year, but we will next year, we are really, what I was trying to anticipate was, you will see in the budgets for Academy, Oak Grove, Putney, some decreases in revenue from Title I because of that spreading it out over more and having to spend more off the top, as it were, for, say, the homeless liaison. So, oh, go ahead.
When you look at the financial data there, the totals that Paul is referring to, it's on page 7. You see, for example, one of the larger subsets of this Title I, it says Title I SWP, that's school-wide programs. We actually spent 1.1 million, and then our budget this year is close to that. If you went back a couple of years, there was some increased funding as a result of the pandemic, but this is directly also related to what the Congress appropriates. And Bernie Sanders has been very, very vocal about increasing funding for this program nationally, and to some extent he's been successful, particularly through the pandemic, but that's where the funding comes from. It's the federal appropriation.
As part of ESEA, Education Secretary Schools, Elementary and Secondary Schools Act, the Johnson administration program that began the funding, use of federal funds for state education in the states. Nickelby was one. No Child Left Behind was one of those. One of the versions of that legislation. It's now ESSA, but it's all the funding, federal funding for those programs. So after Title I is Title IV. That's the well-rounded kind of mixed bag smorgasbord. We fund some coaching positions out of that. We also, by the way, have to share the wealth with the independent schools in our area. Title I, Title IV, Title II, and Title IV. And in some cases, some of the lines that you'll see there include projects that we anticipate those schools will want to pursue. We have to share some of those funds. Title IV is on the middle of page 8, the total there. Small anticipated increase. And then you'll see the ESSER, where the ESSER funds are now going away, ESSER 2, ESSER 1 and 2 on pages 8 and 9. ESSER 3 is on page 9. All those reductions, you can see all those zeros out. Through page 10 and 11. All the way up to some still, Title 2 is then on page 12. Finishing on page 13.
And just to make a connection with what we talked about initially, back on page 9, you know, the first thing you saw in the locally funded budget is the pre-K coordinator. What you see right there on the top of page 9, that's where it goes from 52,000 to 0. That, you know, we wanted to be sure to sustain that work, and that's what we're talking about. All of these programs have been either met the objective and sunsetted, or assigned to a budget with a funding source.
So the pre-K coordinator under ESSER 3 is it's larger, the amount, than the pre-K coordinator that is now locally funded.
Yeah, and that's the difference between who was hired versus the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have somebody we know, we have a clearer understanding of how much we would.
They actually have a contract instead of an idea.
Instead of
an idea, you know, a strategy. These
okay.
all are formed first, where a strategy is written to accomplish an objective. It's included in an application submitted to the Agency of Ed, but all of those are estimates of costs, just like we're doing now. Mm-hmm. And then if it's approved, we go out and hire and administer.
This is just me, really more of a comment. The picture that you just painted of rising poverty and homelessness and all reminds me of the presentation you did about family engagement. Mm-hmm. And the high school has one person whose part of his job is home visits. I'm surprised that there's not a call for a full-time person to do family home visits, to do family engagement. It just seems like an apparent need. We know that from other districts I've read that student success is directly impacted by home visits, by somebody going out to the family and finding out what's happening here. How come your kid isn't going to school? It just seems like that one person in the high school has quite a load on his shoulders.
Well, there are 10 school counselor positions in the high school, and then there are social worker positions that have, that kind of contact. So in that area, the high school is far more invested than most high schools. Another way to say it is the standard is generally one counselor for every 300 students. That's a national and a New England standard. And we have less than 900 students in the high school, and we have 10 counselors. So our investment in that area is very high.
I agree with you, and at the same time, when in LC meetings, I hear from social workers that their caseload is just ridiculously high. Mm-hmm. So you hear it from very different sides.
I think 300 students per one counselor is a caseload that is unbelievably high. So it may be the national standard, but it's it's dismal.
We're well beyond that standard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there are other grants, starting around page 16, maybe a little bit before there. Grants from other sources, page 15, 16. Medicaid funds. You'll see the inclusion of a school nurse leader in there. That's a position that was ESSER funded. No, we had another grant for that that's going away.
It was through a short-term grant, and then that position was shifted to ESSER this year. So, yeah, that's on page 16. So we have a really remarkable person in the central office that submits claims through a state collection agency, and these would be claims for services provided to our students who are eligible for Medicaid, and it's quantifying those costs that are expended on behalf of those students. That creates a reimbursement of about $500,000, and so that $500,000 is reinvested in this this budget that you see on page 16. Most of the money is subgranted to the districts, and it's primarily to sustain nursing services, and at one time it was to help support pre-K, and was it also counseling? It's kind of evolved over the years.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. But as Paul was just mentioning, there's, as you see, a lot of zeros there, and then you have the proposed for the nurse leader. So this is a person that we've had with us for several years, but funded through other grants, and now being affiliated with this grant. We know that this actually oversubscribes this grant. If you look at the bottom line of that group, which is on page 17, 654,000. See that 654, but you see the prior years of 500,000. You know, we know that we probably won't raise 654,000, but we do have a fund balance that would cover that and leave something left over as well. So it's an interim investment that certainly has funding through this period, but it's something that we need to revisit in fiscal year 26, 27.
The school nurse leader has been instrumental in organizing the taking over the district wellness group, WELAC, pulling together all of the nurses to make sure that services are being provided in a consistent way across the district, filling in where necessary on the substitutes for nurses, and nursing substitutes have been a hen's teeth to fund. And she's really been instrumental in making sure that the nursing services are being provided consistently across the district. A few more grants on page 18, the tobacco subgrant. Those are funds that are part of a yearly settlement, yearly allocation from the tobacco company settlement from many years ago. We use those funds primarily to contract with what used to be called Brattleboro Area Prevention Coalition, is now called Building a Positive Community. And that's funding that provides folks going into schools to talk to elementary students about vaping, and to provide some community outreach and health fairs, those sorts of events. And also, with some funding from Title IV, organize our middle school leadership teams. I think some of you have you certainly heard about those in board meetings past. That's where elementary schools look at student climate data and health data and come up with an action plan that they work with their administrator, with the school administrator on. There's a conference for all of them in February, March. It'll be March this year, and during the summer out at Landmark College. It's really quite remarkable to see those students developing those leadership skills, and that's part of the intention is for the tobacco funding, it's development of assets that are shown by research to be helpful in prevention of alcohol and tobacco abuse. Asian Studies grant, funding teacher at the high school at this point, the Mandarin language teacher at the high school, in part. And grants from private sources, VHI grant for teachers, and that's it.
There it is. That's our overview. And you know, these are funded, as you know, by the non-tax or non-assessed costs. These are grants that most of them, well, I would say all of them require a proposal, you know, a grant request. Paul's done just a remarkable job over the years, really setting the standard. I think in the state he's often referred to as the gold standard when they come down for the state audit, and they say, yeah, this is the way grants management ought to work. So those were our proposals for the evening. And just looking ahead, next week on Wednesday, it's a special education proposal and the allocation method of assessing costs for the special ed programs. And then on the 13th, it would be the food service operations and whatever updates we may have on any of our other revenue sources.
If we had to modify our board budget, being up by 10 or 15,000, when would be the last time to do that?
For this board, it would be that 13th of December, yeah. And for the SD, it would be the January 9. It's a second draft.
January 9?
Yeah, January 9 is the second draft.
We're hoping to approve this budget on the 20th.
Right. Yeah. You know, revisions can be made at any time. It's just the reality of integrating it into a public document and then warning that document and then printing it, you know, and distributing it to the public. So we do have another meeting at the SD board on the 23rd, but the intent is to have a final budget that has been prepared at least 10 days before that.
Frank?
Yeah.
Can I make the request that you send an email out to all the board members with those deadlines, just so we have, in the event that there is something that the boards are looking to modify their budget. I don't know whether there is, and it's, but it would just make sure that we would be timely and not trying to catch you at the last minute.
Yeah, and Paul, do you have a moment to just pull the timeline up from the website? Those dates are on that timeline document that we've shared. It's also on the website. It's under if you go to the finance and then go to the SD budget, you'll see the budget timeline. Yeah.
By the way, note the crawling documents across the top, and if you click on the name, you can see the budget for that division.
Another one of Paul's specialty.
Wait a minute, say that one more time, please. I see the banner
crawling
moving.
across
Yes,
the top.
I see that.
You click on it and you go to the budget for.
So you're gonna see the three
Okay,
budgets
got
come
it.
through. Hold on,
Got
click
it,
on
yeah.
the
You gotta move us up there.
This
but
is
you
like
click on
Times Square.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So,
Okay.
so Kelly, it's this document here that Paul's pulling up from the website that has those key budget dates for the board to review, and you know, working backwards, the most important from a legal point of view is for the SD board is March 19. That's the Articles of Agreement said second second, or is it third Tuesday in the month of March. So when you look at that document, you scroll down a little bit more, Paul, you know, there's the 23rd that I had mentioned, and scroll down a little more and you'll see the March 19. So we're rapidly coming up to those dates. But those are the dates, Kelly. So no change-ups unless the governor comes out and says, "Oh, we're not doing in-person meetings like they did several years in a row." But I don't think there's any very low probability of that.
And so, Kim, to your point, this 12-13, this is the SU in the middle, right?
Yeah.
That 12-13 is the last time this board is going to talk about things before you go to an approval meeting on the 20th.
For the SU, yeah.
For the SU.
For the SU budget.
Yeah. And then Vernon is the calendar on the very far right. And Vernon's vote is Australian ballot on town meeting day, but Vernon has its annual in-person meeting the Monday night prior to town meeting.
Paul, could you highlight this SD approval date?
Sure. So that's, the budget gets approved on 1/23, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
prior to 1/23.
Yeah. And if changes are made on the 23rd, it's just the whole system has to be regenerated, which is possible. But the February 13th is when the SD board would need to approve the warning and post it. That's that. No earlier than 40 days, no later than 30 days prior to the 19th.
So the question comes up, how much wiggle room is there throughout the year, going beyond the March annual meeting, let's say? Something comes up where there might be a need to spend some money,
Yeah.
or...
Well, the Vermont statutes say that when a board vote, when the electorate approves the budget that's been presented by the board only has authority to spend up to the amount that was approved. So if
Right.
as you know, there's always a change between the plan and what's implemented. As long as I've been the business administrator, we don't spend more than what the electorate has approved. Now, there could be a day when something came unforeseen, and the statutes do provide a contingency. If it's a health and safety related issue, then you must address it. We do not put students in peril.
Right.
Otherwise, it needs to be a delayed or deferred expenditure. But as you heard, we've managed our budgets very close to the plan. There's always pluses and minuses, but we make sure we're managing those pluses and minuses over the course of the year, so we come out pretty close to the plan.
Right.
You
With
saw
the
that
pluses and minuses, certain line items can certainly be overspent
Right.
based on need. But then we manage the budget by underspending other lines.
So as long as we stay within that bottom line figure that's agreed
Yep.
by the communities, but there's wiggle room in terms of moving from one
Line
item
item,
to
but
the other.
not district to district. Like Vernon doesn't want
No,
this
I
sports-
don't want,
Can we?
I don't want anything to do.
Well, I was looking
with-
at you guys.
Yeah,
But-
within
but-
an entity.
But within the SD budget,
Yeah.
there's wiggle room.
We saw that
Uh-huh.
wiggle room last night when they were talking about the LC stipends.
Okay.
Right, and that's generally, the changes within a function, in this case, it was these, beyond the school day activity, in this case of Leadership Council, and it's still relevant to that segment of the budget. It just may be not a specific after-school program that was contemplated.
Yeah, if the rationale is what's best for kids, ultimately, that's the decision we want to make.
Yep.
Are there any more questions? Anybody out there in Zoom land? Okay. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Before we move on from finance briefly, I would like to move that we approve the warrants of November 8th, 2023 in the amount of $413,328.37. The payroll of November 30th, 2023 in the amount of $599,668.95. Warrants of November 22nd in the amount of November 22nd, 2023 in the amount of $752,226.01. And the payroll of November 17th, 2023 in the amount of $601,175.21. So I've moved this. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you very much. Bills are paid. And here in other business, Mark had a couple of other things to talk with us about. So, the insurance coverage, and then your meeting this afternoon.
Sounds good. Do you want to share our process with insurance coverage, Frank?
Sure, yeah, when we reported this to the SD Finance Committee a couple of weeks ago when this development came to our attention. So normally our insurance premiums are renewed every September. We've been with the Richards Insurance Group as an agency for many, many years, decades I assume, certainly before my time here. And they arrange competitive bids in a cycle for property, liability, workers' comp, auto, insurance. And for several years, their selected carrier is Liberty Mutual. And to quite a surprise to them, and certainly an unprecedented thing in my experience with school business, Liberty Mutual said they would extend our coverage, but they were not interested in covering our system beyond December 1st. So that came as a very big surprise to our agent and to certainly myself. I've never seen that before. Their explanation was the changes in the risk environment, and I would imagine you've heard this before as you just listen to the national news and all the wildfires and the floods and then unfortunately violent events and all the things that insurers have to cover. So neither myself or the administration or our agent was at all pleased to hear that, and the agent went back to work for several weeks, thinking that they would be able to secure coverage on our behalf, and in a best case scenario, convince Liberty Mutual to reconsider. So at the last hour, in my opinion, I didn't want to see this go beyond November 1st, but right up until the day we had that finance committee meeting, the insurer came in at the last minute and said, okay, we will reconsider. But they wanted to increase our premiums 40%. They wanted to go from around 500,000 to nearly 800,000 in premiums. And concurrently, once I got the notice, I went to work looking for alternatives, obviously we had to be in a position to have coverage for the district. And I'm sure you've heard this as well. The Vermont School Board's Insurance Trust was formed back in, I believe it was the late 80s. I was actually one of the first customers of that group in another system. They had also started this self-insured school health insurance pool several years ago, probably, I don't know, maybe more than 10 years ago. Those two systems broke into two separate entities, and in Vermont School Board's Insurance Trust retained the property liability, errors and omissions, that line of coverage, and then Vermont Health Initiative, VHI, was formed. So where they were both one pool, they are now two separate entities. We've stayed with the VHI pool all these years, self-insured health program, but we have not, when I came to Brattleboro, based on the very long relationship this system has had with the local agent and the very good service that we had received from the local agent, and knowing they were bidding the underwriting, I didn't see a need to bid that. But obviously, when we didn't have a viable alternative, I gave Visbit a call. I was very relieved that they said, yes, we will make an exception, and they normally will only renew on their cycle, which is July 1st. But they said, yes, we will consider the application. So we went through a very extensive application process, hundreds of pages of documents to identify our risk management, our capital plan, our cyber security provisions, and so on. And just kind of moments before that meeting, the Visbit proposal came in, and it's substantially less than the Liberty Mutual proposal in terms of its premium, not even close. And all lines of coverage are still intact. Actually, in some instances, it's better coverage. The other benefit is that Vermont School Board's Insurance Trust, all they do is insure Vermont public schools. They organize workshops, risk management services, training services for safety. They have a retainer with Gallagher Associates, one of the very large, highly respected HR legal consultant. And we have access to those resources. So, I'm confident that we are in very good hands, and Vermont School Board's Insurance Trust is a very stable entity, and they have not had the erratic kind of premium changes that the for-profit market has seen. And so often that's also correlated with the stock market, when they invest a lot of their resources in investments, and it has an effect on their portfolio. So that's the background on why the change came about, and it certainly wasn't a planned change, but I'm really pleased with the result, that we still have very good coverage, and we're in with our peers. There's not very many public schools that are not in that pool. So that's that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was
Thank you.
sweating bullets.
I appreciate your efforts.
That's quite a story.
Yeah. Well, then next year when we attend the VSBA conference, if you remember, there was Visbit workshops and VHI workshops. Now we'll be able to attend those.
Right, that's been a little bit of a consternation to our facility managers. There are services that most of their peers are accessing. We have sent, and Visbit has always said, look, we're not going to close the door just because you're not a member. We believe in supporting public schools, And they have allowed us to participate, but it's just, we're not part of that association. Now we are, so we will be, really embracing that.
Okay. We're gonna take 5 minutes.
Okay.
Then we can finish this up, and then I think we'll get to go home.
Sounds good. Do you have your notes from our meeting this afternoon? Okay, so last night we had a healthy discussion around food service and some disappointing feedback that we've heard since the start of the school year. Prior to the Thanksgiving break, we did reach out to Fresh Picks for a meeting to share our feedback and have an expectation of some changes moving forward. So that meeting was held today, central office. Myself and Frank, Susan Grabowski, who spoke last night from Zoom, Hannah Parker joined as well. So we represented the school district, and we met with Fresh Picks corporate leadership, as well as 2 of the head cooks currently at the BUH, this campus site. And one of those cooks is very new, that Hannah referenced last night. So we essentially started the meeting by really sharing very specific feedback. We shared the discussion that took place very publicly at the board meeting the night before, expressed our concerns and desires for better outcomes moving forward. So that kind of set the table for the meeting. Again, we did review what the food service provider is allowed to do in terms of serving size around protein and sides as well. But some of the things that immediately will change, like tomorrow, will be an issue of just total food being served on this campus and in the cafeteria. One of the major feedback red flags has been when the students who are in lunch C, which is the 3rd lunch of the day, it's been routinely dwindling choices. They've essentially been running out of the meals, or all options of the meals. So that's unacceptable. So that'll change tomorrow. In addition, what they're going to add to the kind of system of serving the food is they're going to dedicate one of the staff members to be in charge of line maintenance. So essentially, the maintenance of the student line going through the lunch line, and also of the areas where food is delivered and picked up by the children. So we really can't get to a place where a child goes to get a hamburger and they're out of hamburgers. So the job of this new role will be, when we get to a certain percentage at a food tray, like, we're restocking that immediately, so that we don't run into these problems. A share cooler was just recently added, so we talked through the dynamics of how to get food into the share cooler that's allowable. So that's gonna mean some training for students and staff and how to do that. We talked about the importance of getting feedback from students, the people who are actually eating the food on a daily basis. So we've asked for them to supply an example student survey. So that's going to be emailed to Hannah tomorrow. Hannah and Susan will collaborate on some edits to the survey. We really don't want it to be a lengthy survey. We just want to get to the point, get the feedback from the kids, share that feedback with Fresh Picks, and the expectation is that feedback will be seen through in the performance and in the quality of the service. We also asked for a family survey. So that'll be going out. We settled on December 11th for the family survey. Another addition that we talked about starting up on this campus is an after-school meal program. Currently, we don't have that in place, but it is available. So we were like, yeah, yes,
Okay.
yeah. So we're like, yes, we want that. So the goal is that program will start up upon the winter sports season, so within the next week or two. We'll start.
Wouldn't that affect the budget?
What's that?
Wouldn't that be an increase in the budget?
It won't be significant. The subsidies this year are almost 100%.
Great.
So that's an addition that we won't see that addition tomorrow, but likely in the end of next week or the week after. We also, you may know, at the elementary schools, Kelly Diaz referenced this last night, that there's a backpack program at the Brattleboro Town elementary schools where on Fridays, the schools essentially send home food for the weekend for children and families who want that. Fresh Picks is willing to work with us on getting that up and running. They wouldn't necessarily run that program, but they do have experience working with high schools who have engaged in that process. So Susan's going to be reaching out to Chris Thayer of the Vermont Food Bank. Chris is wonderful, and we'll see if we can get that available for high school students.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? What is it?
It's the food backpack program through the Vermont Food Bank.
Is that for high school too?
It can be, I believe. We're going to look into that.
I'm happy to refer you to Laura Chapman, the director of Putney
Oh,
Food Shelf, who runs Food for Kids also at Putney Central, or assists in it at any rate.
Yep. Great.
Yeah,
The
that's great.
After-school meal program, is that K through 12 too?
It can be.
Can be, yeah.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, we gotta make sure it happens.
Yeah.
Right now, through the after-school program in the elementaries, we serve after-school meals to support those programs. It's kind of incentivizes the programs, but we haven't been offering that at the high school. So that's something that's a major change that we're going to
The only
expect to see sooner than later.
The only criteria is that student does have to demonstrate that they're engaged in an activity. So,
That's right.
there is a criteria to be eligible, but that won't be hard.
Oh, you mean an after-school program,
Yeah,
like the student advisory committee?
Yes,
could be.
absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, sports or at the high school, which is going to be probably the most common interested party. It could actually absolutely be music or
Clubs.
leadership or clubs. Yeah.
Theater.
Yeah. Any after-school activity would be supported with an after-school meal.
Will that be every day?
Yeah,
Can
the way
be,
it will
yeah.
work is there's essentially a request for a certain number of meals. It would be coordinated. For example, Hannah said she would coordinate initially with Chris Sawyer for making sure all of the sports teams know that it's available. But there has to be a number of meals requested, before the end of the school day, so that the service can make those meals available.
So in terms of like immediate change, what we would expect, like say tomorrow, would be essentially just more food being offered, more sides being offered for the students, and a direct responsibility of one of the staff members to literally take that on as part of his or her job. So that's the immediate change that we should see tomorrow. And then the development of the share cooler, the student family surveys, the after-school meal program, those would likely, we see those happening next week. Or December 11th was a day that was agreed upon between Hannah and Cafe's Fresh Picks around, I think, the family survey, if I got that right.
Yeah.
Was there any consideration of sandwiches? This is typically, no matter the school, a problem. Waiting online for sandwich preparation, and it just does not work. The kids don't have the time.
Yeah, that was a big part of the conversation, and what we were relaying to them is lunches are short. Mm-hmm. Kids cannot be waiting in line 10, 15 minutes to get their meal and then be given 5 minutes to eat it. Like, the food needs to be there so the line moves quickly and the kids have an appropriate amount of time to enjoy their meal. So that hasn't been happening, and we were very frank about that with them.
They are going to initiate a pre-order system for the sandwiches using a QR code, and it's been successful. I think they had it, they said previously, but with their turnover hadn't brought it back, but it's expected to very much accelerate access to food, and that won't take long to launch. That's mainly enabling a Google system and allowing a QR code interface so that it goes right to the kitchen and food's available very quickly.
And then we talked about the concept of like marketing, and the kids need to know like you care about them and you want their feedback and you want to produce meals that they're going to enjoy. So we talked about the importance of that. To respond to the surveys. When you get the responses, how are you going to respond to them? Same with the family surveys. It's a proactive approach to get feedback, but it's how you respond to the feedback, which is really where the rubber meets the road. So I may have missed a few things from the meeting, Frank. Feel free to jump in, but we're going to meet with them again, likely middle of January, end of January. And just kind of see, where are we? Are we starting to meet the mark that we expect? Because we haven't this fall. It's been frustrating. Because historically, they've been pretty good, especially under Allie West's leadership, which was
Another one
obvious.
let go.
Mm-hmm. A couple of things. Mark really covered it very thoroughly. Just a couple of things kind of looking around the corner. They mentioned this idea of a burrito bowl.
Right.
Super popular in other high schools, but it's definitely another level of staffing. So they're working toward that. They know it will be a terrific hit with the kids, and
is that a food in a bowl, or are you talking about a lining of
and the
people?
rice and the things
Like
that
a burrito.
Super,
You are talking about that, a real food.
Yeah.
Okay, just
super
making sure.
popular, meets the nutrition
Yes.
requirements.
Yes.
And they were saying that as soon as they do get their capacity where they need to be, they would have that available every day. So that was encouraging. The other thing from just a quality point of view that they mentioned is, they absolutely acknowledge that at Academy where so many food sources are prepared, they really did not have a good match with a chef.
Yeah.
And that there's been a turnover there, and they have an excellent replacement, and Kelly did affirm that they're really happy with food quality. So they were not making excuses. They owned the lack of performance, and they understand the expectation is there, and we will be following up every day.
Well, once again, thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't feel like we solved it yet.
No, let's
But
wait.
You're
Let's
on your
wait.
way.
Yeah, we'll get in there.
This is important, and let's give it a wait and see
Yes.
before we send out accolades. But thank you very, very much for going after this aggressively.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Next is Food Connects. one of the bizarre things is Food Connects buys locally, but only in Vermont. So sometimes they get food from Burlington instead of 10 miles away from Massachusetts. What we need is a tri-state Food Connects system, so they don't have to travel 3 hours for something that's 15 minutes away.
Kelly?
But that's down the line.
Yeah, I just wanted to also thank you, Mark and Frank, for having that conversation and really providing the support to the students and the communities, and also the teachers who that really is what started this conversation, the teachers who were providing those snacks. So it really is an overall support for the general community. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And again, I think let's give it a couple of weeks and check in and see where we are.
Right.
But seem to have received the message pretty loud and clear. We were pretty straightforward with the feedback.
Good. Are there any other questions? We are done.
Deborah?
Madam Chair, I forgot the script.
There being no further
I'm sorry, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we are adjourned.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, I thought you said it. And we are adjourned at 8:05.
Wow.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.